Welcome back, everyone, for our final webinar for today of the Codex Knowledge Accelerator, which will focus on policies for sustainable digitalization. On the agenda today, we will first welcome Alice Crisper from the ITU, who will be giving an overview and setting the scene on the evolving policy environment for digitalization in EU agriculture. And then after that, we will welcome some colleagues from ADL who will present some policy tools for sustainable digitalization before we move on to an open discussion and a Q&A where you'll be able to ask your questions to the speakers and also intervene if you have any comments on the topic. So first of all, I will give the floor to Alice, who is the digital agriculture specialist at the ITU, and he will be presenting the policy environment for digitalization in EU agriculture, and including some findings from the ITU FAO report. Thank you. Alice, the floor is yours.
Hi to everyone. Maybe just to mention, our activities are mainly focused into the pre-accession period of the preparation of the countries to enter and achieve the compliance with the EU requirements, rules, philosophies, and strategies, standards, and so on. So I'm working with ITU and FAO in different countries. But for this pre-accession support, in particular now, very active in Albania and Kosovo. Otherwise, I'm in establishment of governmental information systems, digital systems, and organizational systems, like for 24 years of experience in the area of Western Balkans, Croatia, Slovenia, Moldova, and Ukraine now, and so on. Shall we continue? So actually, what is the issue is in the current CAP policy framework, we can spot a big difference in comparison to previous periods. Because this CAP brings us increased digitalization, increased integration of the systems, and of course, strong, how can I say, emphasis into the strategies for development of digital technologies in agriculture and rural areas. So, of course, extremely important, how can I say, part of it is also digital farm advisory and acquis, which was actually not taken into account so much in the years before. But now we are facing with all of these interconnected systems that are established by CAP strategic regulations that they can provide very good proof-based support to agricultural knowledge and, of course, acquis. Next, please. So we are dealing under ITU and FAO in 4 segments. We are designing the national strategies together with the governments. We are supporting them in actually integrating all of the elements of the requirements, and also the additional elements which will contribute to more efficient and effective implementation of agricultural policies in the countries. Then we have e-governmental systems with special emphasis in how can I say, integrating and coherency of those systems, which will actually at the end create a very good and coherent data infrastructure for other activities, like for design of national agricultural policies in line EU rules, and they can also serve as a tool for advisory, AKIS, and further can be also updated from the grounds from the innovative systems like sensors and so on. Then we have smart digital villages, which are extremely important for generational renewal of rural areas, because as we know, we have a big problem of old populations which are losing productivity, which are trying to, how can I say, use the digital tools, but unfortunately they are not efficient anymore as the youngsters. On the other hand, we have the youngsters coming very slowly coming from the cities, and they are facing different problems, such as infrastructure services and so on. And of course, the increased population in rural areas would also be a problem because of the basic infrastructure problems. Then we have digital advisory services. We are planning here from the top down and advising to the governments how to organize the advisory services, because the problem is that if the advisory services and its interconnectivity with AKIS in AKIS is not organized well, then you don't have any control, and you are not actually using you are not passing the messages which need to be passed from the governments and from the policymakers to the farmers. Yes, next. So the basic concepts in architecture that we are designing is first is the use of standards and codes. UN actually and UN members have agreed on like number of codes, standards, and so on, which are extremely important to be used throughout the agriculture activities, administrative systems. Because, for instance, if you're not using the codes which are agreed upon amongst the members upon, for instance, codes of different agriculture products, activities, and so on, then you cannot use them in the drop-down menus in the phone, for instance. On the other hand, when collecting the data from the grounds, like soil analysis and so on, it's very good if it's coded correctly, so that this data is collected in transparent and coherent way. The other thing is interoperability and data exchange and reuse. The CAP envisaged very, very good support to data exchange and reuse. And of course, most of the countries are now establishing a digital public infrastructures which need to be used in the public information systems for agriculture supports, so that we are aware that the data is actually is proof-based, administratively checked, and so that we don't need to check them anymore. So the additional thing is use of SDAI. I mean, a lot of data have been collected like in 30 years under CAP. So why don't we reuse it? Well, many of the countries are not reusing those data entirely. So it would be very good to reuse them. Additionally, we are proposing, as the problem is when in agriculture, that the farmers' data are not available because the farmers are mostly non-business entities, and they don't need to provide the data, particularly the data on the buildings or the capacities in the farm, except of those which are available under direct payment schemes. So we are encouraging the authorities to collect as much as data, which can be then reused for FSDN or statistics. Then the third thing is user focus. It's very important in order to make the supports more accessible by the farmers. Of course, we all know that direct payments are easy to get, but the problem is with structural supports. For instance, digital technologies or tractors, mechanizations, attachments, and so on. For this, I mean, there is no requirements for the information systems except for guidelines for simplification. But well, I think the improvements are very necessary because without simple access, the small farmers, or which are now considered 10 hectares, cannot access very easily the mechanization, digital tools for more efficient production, and so on. So we are advising on governments how to do the calculations of simplified cost options and fixed costs, how to design the simplified business plans on the basis of FSDN, and of course we are encouraging them to use the mobile first principle because on basis of the statistics, I mean, the mobiles are very much used in urban as well as in rural areas. So also we are, I mean, with all of this data gathered and with the data infrastructure built, we can then promote simple cooperations via other portals, investment sharing via leader initiatives or digital villages, or also in cooperation of small farmers. Then we have this enabling environment for acquisition of skills. We actually established or proposed to organize the village centers for common use where, for instance, they would be able to meet or implement the programs envisaged under the advisory support or EIPs or skills in the village centers. Then, of course, it's very important that the portals with services are designed which are needed. For instance, you don't need the global perspective information when you are a farmer. You need very easy to get advisory service. You need very easy to get veterinarian service or declaration of animal movement. You need to get, I don't know, the service for the tractor, or you need, of course, you need to have these services available for subsidies and so on, but these are once per year. So actually, this is our approach in order to actually support the farmers to be less burdened by the administration. Next, please. Well, the main issue that we are facing now, or in all of these projects, is generational renewal, because we are meeting elderly people everywhere, and without having a clue or an idea how to organize themselves to attract younger people to stay in villages, and how to motivate them to actually form their families in villages. So actually we are very much active in smart village approaches. I mean, it's a project FAO, Project Digital Villages, which is also compliant with the leader approach. Then we have the knowledge transfer, of course, if the youngsters want to stay in village, they need to have firstly services, and then they need to have very high available advice on how to cultivate the land. Regarding the use of digital technologies, we advise on use of FSDN as proof-based advice to be used by advisors. At the end, on the other hand, it's good to have personal FSDN pre-populated with other databases, just to be sure that you can, as a farmer by yourself, update the data just for information purposes, and of course, to see what is, to see your position in comparison to your neighbors. Then we are missing somewhere e-learning and webinars for farmers. And they're very easily accessible. Some of the countries, they do have them. Some of the countries, they don't. But it's very good tool, and everyone actually can use it. There's there are no skills needed too much for farmers. But of course, the materials need to be updated and prepared, of course, and in line of the guidelines, and in line and coherent with scientific findings and innovations and so on. Of course, we have also proposed, there are already some of the initiatives or some of the organizations that are doing that, countries that are doing that, is certifications for advisors. It's very good actually to support intergenerational exchange, to offer the possibilities of also to the elderly people to get certified, so that they get the newest requirements, the newest approaches in agriculture, and at the same time they can provide the knowledge and experience regarding their environment when they're actually transferring, for instance, the farms to the young farmers. Then we are suggesting the organization of AKI's knowledge exchange, regular AKI's knowledge exchange between advisor and innovation and research. This is very important in order also to give advisors the regular informations and instructions of what they need to pass to the farmers, so that the information is actually edited and under control, and their knowledge, of course, updated. On the other hand, it's very good that the advisors are informing the researchers on the new findings, the new happenings, and about the monitoring results of the farms. Then we have very good thing, EIP partner. I mean, EIPs are, I like them very much. EIP partner search utility is very good. But the problem is in this, as we see in these EIPs, is that results of these EIPs are not transferred into the practice in the form of support schemes. So I think it would be very good that the results of this innovative, how can I say, or pilot projects are published, and of course that the member states or the countries can use them in support schemes. Next, please. So the idea is to build the very, how can I say, the very good digital environment when all of the stakeholders, policy stakeholders, beneficiaries can participate. That means that if we have farms with list of people, members of the farm, with assets that they possess or that they can give into onto the market as on disposal to the village, their locations, then when we have the locations of processing capacities and the description, when we have the basic infrastructures of villages, and when we have the pilot plots and the knowledge support, then we can do a very good, how can I say, local organization of supply, first to local public institutions, for instance, the schools. We can do the organization of production and of agricultural products and food. And of course, then we can do also the organization of the market via local markets and stores. I'm so sorry. So I think what we are missing now is much more emphasized role of rural development strategies, strengthening of local governments and villages to support all of these services. And of course, what is missing now in the information systems of the CAP is inclusion of the non-EX data into this network of integrated information systems. So this is what we are doing now. We are actually preparing a design of guidelines how to do that. Maybe an example we have next, I think.
Sorry to interrupt, Alice. As we're running over the timing, could you please conclude in the next few minutes?
Okay, then go to the last page with links. Yes, these are links to the guidelines we developed in 2024. I think they are still active despite of the simplifications and changes currently adopted, because this vision for agriculture for by 2040 is actually very similar. So you're very pleased to visit these pages. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Alice. We'll also have some times in case anyone has questions afterwards. So next, I will welcome Blanca Casares and Raquel Pastor, who are policy experts at ADL, and they will present some tools they developed for guiding public investments and designing local digital strategies. So I will first give the floor to Blanca, and she will present some guidelines for local digitalization strategies. Blanca, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. I hope you can see it well. Not in full mode yet.
It's not in presentation mode yet. Yes, perfect.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Blanca Casares, and part of the ADL's team. And today I will be presenting the guidelines for local digitalization strategies in agriculture, developed within the Codex project framework. And why local digitalization strategies matter at this level? As we have been discussing in previous presentations and during the full day today in different webinars, digitalization is not an end itself. It is a means to achieve bigger goals, inclusion, sustainability, and resilience. And local and regional authorities have a unique role in translating European priorities the goals for the common agricultural policy, the digital decade, environmental goals, and into practical action at their level. And then when this is done right, digitalization for sure drives modernizations, innovation, and strengthen the competitiveness and resilience of local economies. Looking ahead to the EU multi-annual financial framework for next period, 2028-2034, within the national and regional partnership plans, we will have the opportunity for coherent and targeted digital investments. But we must also recognize both opportunities and risks. Digital tools, as we know, can support waste management, pollution prevention, and more sustainable resource use. And at the same time, there is a risk of exclusion, of misuse of data, and resilience gap that needs to be carefully managed. And here again, the role of local and regional policymakers. Ultimately, data is the real enabler. The previous presentation from Alice has clear thought on that. When governed effectively, it supports smarter decisions, efficiency, and accountability. And local strategies are the key to making sure no region, no farmer, and no community is left behind. How we approach this, how we have developed this tool for policymakers. A key strength of this approach is the interdisciplinary and participatory perspective, ensuring that different actors and perspectives are systemic level thinking and incorporated. The results is delivered as a part of the policy tool, broader policy tools in Codex. My colleague Raquel will present another tool of this toolbox that will be ready next year. And it aims to provide practical guidelines for policymakers at this level. At the same time, the methodology, you will see that links directly into the Codex conceptual framework. This ensures that local strategies are not developed in isolation, but aligned with a broader systemic goals. And it means strategies are conceptualized with socio-technological and ecological dimensions, and always embed in sustainability-focused perspective. The output is a practical step-by-step template you will see in next slide for developing this digital local strategy. These templates help regions to assess the needs, the state of play, co-create solutions, and prioritize interventions. And then also monitor progress in implementation. It emphasizes inclusivity, adaptability, and resilience across different agricultural contexts. Here in this slide, you can see the different components, elements of the practical tool. The process or the tool is built around two main blocks. As I said, first, a baseline assessment where regions, municipalities, local areas analyze their starting point. Is the baseline assessment for strategy development. And this is step one, where they will analyze with a series of questions I will now introduce. The strategic backdrop, the local context, this digital maturity, the policy alignments at different levels in different areas, the priority action areas, infrastructure, services, data governance, exclusion, and innovation, the governance and stakeholder, the different roles, the committees, the partnership in place or needed, and the capabilities and skills of the developers, it means the local regional policymakers. And then the training need, the capacity building, and the institutional competencies. Before going to the real drafting, validation, and finalization of the strategy, how the templates foreseen to address, to analyze the different aspects. The tool includes a series of questions, close-ended questions with yes, partly or no. Well, in each of the questions, local authorities can mark where they are, but then they have a space for justification to structure the benchmarking. And also based on the, imagine they are clicking, have you clearly defined the local context for digitalization of agriculture? One of the questions that I put here has an example. If they put partly, they will need to justify their answer, and then they have a space for actions needed. Then at the end of the full exercise, they will have all the actions that are needed to complete and to develop the strategy. And there is also another set of questions for each of the chapters that are open. And then there is a need of a narrative insights that allows policymakers to capture more in detail the context, the rationale, the challenges, the choices that they have. Here is just a set of questions for one of the areas. For the second block, the drafting, validation, and finalization of the strategy, the local authorities will analyze and assess the implementation roadmap, a series of phases, actions needed. They will set milestones, key performance indicators, the security around the data and the strategy, the plan. They will also establish, define the funding and the resources, well, public, coming from the different levels, EU, national or other scale, private financing, and the sustainability plan. They will also work on the vision, the full vision, and the monitoring, including target evaluation and accountability, all the indicator sets. And we also foreseen the possibility to develop a series of annexes, more in detail the diagnostics that is linked to the first chapter, the strategic backdrop, a glossary, stakeholder engagement, a stakeholder mapping, and all the stakeholders that will be taken into consideration for the different sections. And also in some of the chapters, we foreseen some participatory phases for the design of the actions needed based on the analysis, and then an annex for risk and concrete case studies for concrete context. Then this template provide an structure framework, but is modular and flexibility. It means we give a series of questions for each of the chapters, but local regional authorities can adapt this question and can add new additional questions based on their needs. And then some recommendations for fine-tuning the tool. Make the checklist actionable. For example, translate the self-assessment results, these all justifications and narrative and actions needed into a color code or numerical system that facilitate the prioritization of activities to carry out to complete the guidelines. It combines quantitative and qualitative monitoring. It's enough to measure adoption rates linked to, for example, connectivity, digital skills, and so on. And then, it can be added additional indicators for territorial impact, resilience, sustainability, inclusion, as I said, based on the needs. Incorporate the stakeholder feedback from different actors, farmers, advisory services, local stakeholders that somehow validate and work together on the work that is done by or led by the local regional decision makers. Strengthen the policymaker competencies. As we know from different research, capacity building is crucial, and especially in areas like data-driven needs assessment, financial planning, or regulatory alignment. It means this tool also allows to understand more the capacity building needs for the policymakers to build a holistic strategy, ensure alignment and inclusivity. This needs to be embedded in the EU national and regional priorities, having into consideration small holders, women, youth, and rural communities, and also prevent the digital divides, and finally guarantee long-term sustainability. It means in the financial part, clear funding pathways to be able to give sustainability to the strategy beyond, for example, the governance of 4 years in a concrete government. And with this, I will conclude and give the floor to my colleague Raquel for the other guideline.
Okay, thank you, Blanca. I'm going to. You see it, right? Okay.
Yes.
So, as we may know, and Blanca already said, there are multiple policy tools in the field of digitalization, but one of the main questions could be why are these necessary? When we talk about digitalization, but also public investment, we are not just discussing technology adoption, we are also addressing public spending. So working with these kind of tools imply we move beyond simple investment to guarantee strategic coherence, efficiency, and long-term impact. We also know digitalization is a strategic priority across Europe for the agri-food sector and rural communities. However, the sector faces critical challenges such as lack of data interoperability, unclear standards, difficulty in the adoption of strategic to specific regional conditions. So the challenge is not just a digital transformation, but it's how we fund that transformation effectively. So at this point, another question could be, how do we guarantee the long-term impact and accountability of this public investment? Our baseline or reference is that maybe there is no standardized frameworks and there are a lot of gaps. For example, if we do not have a way to compare projects or measures before we commit funds, maybe we can have the risk of inefficiency, and the result will be funding projects that are not suited correctly or not ready for adoption. Second point will be the top-down failures, because sometimes these strategies not take into account or not consider at all the specific needs of diverse rural communities. So this disconnection between policy design and local reality frequently lead to failed technology adoption. And lastly, lack of accountability without clear criteria applied at every stage, it becomes complicated to assure how the public money is being spent to achieve long-term sustainability goals. So all these gaps aims to develop a systematic policy tools to achieve this challenge, also the guidelines and this checklist. So what could be one of the possible solutions? At this point, we did not try to reinvent the wheel, but we think it's need to have a creative and innovative structures to build how public investment can be oriented to digitalization in agriculture and rural areas. So this is an exercise to rethink the tools we have. Our three pillars of our works are that we structured information with all evidence and policy recommendation from Codex and other EU projects research in 8 categories, 8 categories of technology or areas to invest, this one. Secondly, we embed the 4 phases of investment life cycle to ensure systematic evaluation at every step. That will be the yellow one. And lastly, for the checklist, we include the OECD principles, include 4 effective public investment to build the checklist. So the central idea with this tool is to break down or to transform complex objectives into actionable and measurable items, and verify the different checkpoints specifically designed for policymakers. Here, the figure you can see in the left is the proposed checklist structure we have made. The tool is designed to evaluate every investment along two key dimensions. On one side, the life cycle, it first the evaluation from the why, from the pre-investment phase to the what was achieved regarding the impact evaluation phase, the last one, and covering all four investment stages here. On the other one, the checklist includes an holistic assessment to ensure an evaluation that measures not just financial viability, but also social and environmental impact, warranting sustainable policy choices. With all of this, we have three main points that the checklist shapes public decision making as a strategic tool, trying to help policymakers to prioritize items, and also allows them to compare and optimize resource allocation. Secondly, the checklist, we think that can adapt and balance the top-down strategy with a bottom-up territorial reality. And thirdly, because it can ensure accountability through standardized criteria. This is an example of our draft, including what it shows one of the 8 categories. In this case is digital infrastructure and connectivity, and you can see the different elements included in its investment life cycle stage, and the OECD principle that should be considered for the checklist. And this is repeated for the 8 categories we have developed in the checklist. Finally, we believe the checklist is a flexible instrument. It should be. And this is also needed for driving the long-term competitiveness and resilience on the real sector. Still working on this, the tool is currently undergoing to expert validation to confirm, first of all, if it's practical and feasibility in real policy environments. And as key next step, as Blanca also mentioned, we think it's important to translate this framework into a visual, user-friendly interface, maybe with color code, allowing policymakers to quickly view and understand the results to ensure wide adoption and use. So this has been the presentation.
Thank you very much, Raquel, and also Blanca for this for showing these tools. So now we will have the time for discussion, and participants will be able to ask some questions. And I will give the floor to Serafin Pazos, who is going to moderate. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello again. For those who are the brave, I know there's some people who are coming and going, but I think there's a considerable number of people who have been all along. So very much appreciated to holding on. On these last 2 presentations, this is the first time with these tools that ADL colleagues just been developing for Codex. So this is the first time we publicly release what we are preparing. So, you know, high level feedback on that will be very welcome to make sure that we are starting the right track. We want to do something that is predictable. But while waiting for maybe some questions for them, I already got a question from Nicolaus from Agri, if I'm not mistaken, which is a question for Alice from FO. And it's interesting because a civil servant normally tend to be very diplomatic, but rather undiplomatic or very direct in the question. So basically, in your opinion, Alice, what is the biggest challenge the pre-accession countries that you've been discussing facing the digitalization agricultural sector, and which is the one that is more advanced in the digitalization of agriculture? If you might diplomatically answer the question to a rather direct question from a fellow official.
Thanks. Actually, what is the answer is what is the challenge? Actually, the awareness that the digital technologies need to serve to supply of food. This is the major issue, the supply of healthy food, locally produced food to people which are doing good life in rural areas. This is very, very important to know because many of the countries, pre-accession countries, have different view on this. I mean, they see the subsidies in agriculture as as something what is extra, and they are putting extra controls to farmers. Actually, instead of having different view. You were asking which country is most advanced in digital agriculture. This is very difficult question because regarding the data infrastructure, I have to say Serbia is really very advanced, and they know the agriculture. They do have very good advisory service. They do have a lot of information gathered in numerical format, but not in the GIS, so they are not entirely compliant, but they are very good. Regarding the digital information system, I would say Montenegro is very advanced, but have to be taken into account that very small, relatively small percentage of farmers is registered in the farm register. Thirdly, Albania is very much progressing in advancement. We are working with them now and to establish very slowly the whole concept. Kosovo is very good. They have established a lot of things. We supported them in development of digital agricultural strategy and the action plan, which is I can say very advanced and in line with CAP strategic plans guidelines, would I say. So yeah, they are progressing very well. And in many of the segments, they're more aware of use of digital technologies to support the people than many of the EU member states.
Okay, well, that's a pretty straightforward question, and that's actually interesting because sometimes we tend to think Europe we know best because we got more sophisticated, and actually sometimes there's an advantage of those coming later because there's less path dependencies and they can start off better. So it's a very interesting reflection. I just have a comment. I will do run the Mentimeter later, like in a moment, but I'd like to have a comment for Blanca and Raquel. Well, for those of you who don't know them, I mean, they, apart from working in ADL, previously they were working in the development, implementation, evaluation of CAP strategy plans, or the equivalent in the past, and rural development programs. So how do you, I mean, that's just a honest question. I mean, how do you realistically think a tool like this can help people in the situation where you were in previous professional lives in terms of actually making informed decisions about the strategy and about the investments? How do you think this is really helpful, or is just something that we, particularly you, likes to develop tools and indicators and checklists, but how realistically think this is actually useful for the official in the ministry or in the regional department trying to develop a new strategy for both digitalization policies and corresponding investments? So just try to sell yourself your own work to see whether you manage to convince everybody else that this is a useful piece of work. Go ahead.
Who wants to start, Raquel? Or
I think these kind of tools are necessary in terms of, as we have seen during all this day, there is a lack of coordination, or at least it seems that it needs to be more coordination among all the stakeholders in this process, digitalization in agriculture. And also these kind of tools, I think it will be also important to review the process. I mean, to have feedback from all the process learning what have been done in the past, and trying to make efforts to at least make in other ways or look for the strength and trying to learn of the mistakes. At least this is my opinions, and I think it should be a strength in the policy cycle having this kind of tools for the evidence-based and have tangible results. Blanca?
Yeah. When we have been working on the design of these guidelines, I think both of us were thinking from our previous positions as a technical assistants. It is true, not only from what will be useful, also what is existing in any member states. It's true that in the member state that there is a strategy already on digitalization. Sometimes it's at national level. Then for me, these outputs foreseen in codes provide this added value, because we were thinking in another scale in the local and regional policymakers, because normally this process, these kind of strategies are developed at the national level, but then there is a miss of real analysis of territorial context, the case studies that we foreseen to develop to tackle different situations. I see completely that any policy decision maker at any scale, national, regional, or local, if they need to prepare this guideline, in my case, the guideline for local digitalization strategies, they will start with a technical assistant from this point. Like, okay, let's structure all the chapters, the pre-assessment, the design, something that allow us to assess the implementation, monitoring, and so on. Then I think this is the first step for sure. I think are really useful, modular, flexible, to adapt, and what is important, and I see, for example, in the latest report from the GRC published a few days ago, the state of digitalization in EU agriculture. In this survey, the GRC is asking for different questions, but one of the main results is local administration. I think local administration and governments has the main role to facilitate adoption of technologies. This is one of the main roles, and also the analysis of data generated with digital technologies to extract patterns, and based on these patterns, enrich a strategy. Then, I think this is a unique product for local and regional.
Clearly made your case. It was not a rhetorical question, but it's a question many people might ask. Yet another thing. So I think that's the other value is clearly made. Abusing a bit your tolerance, but we are still within time. I would like to run the Mentimeter questions, because there are some people that might not being keen at this late to make direct questions, but still your feedback will be extremely useful. You got there the Menti code. For those of you who can run it, is the Menti. You have to go to menti.com and run 63168959. By the way, and you can log in and we go run the questions. Alice and Nicolaus, if we can still cover that before the end of the meeting. So bear with us. But we think it's a useful process for everybody to be able to answer this. Or at least to provide some additional flavor in terms of feedback through Mentimeter. So the first question, I insist, the code menti.com. So the first question is, where do you see the most critical gap in current EU and national digitalization policies? Insufficient integration, indicators, weak alignment between the national, EU and regional strategies, limited evidence in evaluating digital investment, underrepresentation of small and marginalized farms, slow policy response to technological innovation investments. Well, that's quite clear so far. Let's see if, I mean, there's a few people who basically press on very quickly. Let's see if anybody else before we go to the next one. Yeah, I see. That makes more sense. Never. Yeah, let's give a few. But I think the trend is pretty established. I think we're just trying to elicit an immediate response, and I think the hierarchy is more or less stable so far. See if there's a additional question. If not, we go to the next question, also bearing in mind with time. Yeah. The next question is, what type of policy support tool will be the most effective or promising to improve decision-making on digitalization, as we just been discussing? And this is an open field, so you can basically write your answer. If you could still bear with us at this time. No, I don't know. If actually this system is actualizing, I don't really know if now we go to the next one. I think we have like a lot of presentations about tools in the last hour. So the next one is, in your view, what are the most significant challenges for the practical application and impact of the tools presented? Again, I was following up my follow-up question to Raquel and Blanca. Well, I think the time is okay. Good. We still have some. Oh yes, Emil, you are absolutely right. Two concluding questions at this time of the day, and many people it's lunchtime, well past lunchtime. So, okay, general adoption, slow policy implementation, political commitment at local level, availability of robust evidence, the gap between academics and practice. That's why we are here with public officials or people who are working in public administration to bring the gap in developing these tools. Okay, I think that's pretty fair. I'd like to still go to what kind of support resource do you consider necessary to facilitate the adaptation of these tools? We are developing tools and others will be developing tools. It's been mentioned here in the side chat a number of recent publications like the ones mentioned by Blanca a moment ago. But what if you are implementing investments or the digitalization strategies in agriculture, what is your support you will need? Capacity, funding, use cases and impact, essentially this example, practical guidance, so essentially to make not just a tool, but actually something you can actually engage with. Makes complete sense. Training, I was waiting for that. We also call it capacity building, which is not mentioned, but I'm sure it will be. And that's absolutely right, because sometimes you can have tools, you can have the money, you even have time scales, but as I say, also this partnership support, I mean, you're not necessarily the whole landscape. Capacity building, as somebody has said, and guidance. I think that's the other element, scientific background. I mean, that should be both in terms of availability of data, but also in terms of the materials to be used to develop the investment strategies. Well, I think that's a good collection. In one word, just to conclude this Mentimeter, how should agricultural digitalization policy look like in 2035? if that was difficult questions before, here you got the final one, which is no less challenging. But you can use one word. Try not to be rude at this time of the day, please. There might be children watching, so just one sentence, one word. Sorry. Not the end of itself. That's a very fair one. Particularly technologies tends. I'm not a technologist, so I can say it. They tend to think technology is just an end in itself, and that's not. Useful for stakeholders. That's true. Otherwise, we have digital exclusion. Inclusive. So therefore, when you develop strategies, you need to actually think about the furthest to reach groups and individuals and sectors and value chains, in this case, agriculture. Granular has to go to the very local level, for instance, a very local value chain level, for instance. Okay. And serving communities, because this is about not the end of itself, but actually being inclusive. I think that we get the gist of what you like from these tools and the work that we are doing in Codex. I think we're going to leave it here. Before we go to the final words from Hervé, there is a couple of comments and I think Alex would like to take the floor. So feel free. I don't remember exactly what was reacting to, but feel free to come back, Alex, since you asked for the floor. There's mute.
Yeah, I just have one comment on this. For instance, for leader approach or for revitalizing of the rural areas, I think we don't actually need a very complicated leader approach. Maybe it's good to nominate a village master, and then they would maybe promote or be as a service to people, to elderly people, and where in phases the services needed will be developed. I mean, because the problem is in villages that there is no master like in blocks in the cities. Nobody cares about people, and that's the main problem. When such a person is established, I mean, we did get these ideas from Kosovo, for instance. It's a very good idea, I think, that the member states establish some kind of village masters who would care about people.
I agree. I mean, I come from a village, and I spent most of my year in a village who has its own or self-autonomous organization. And sometimes the problem is that, for instance, leader doesn't reflect on that. I mean, it just creates a separate structure, and that's sometimes an issue. But hard to say, leader is only a small part of investment. I mean, governments can develop their own. I mean, it's actually in the regulations. There is like features you can actually develop local strategies more tailored to the socio-economic or sociological structures. But that's a fair point, and definitely one we very much subscribe. I think, Blanca, before we conclude, I think you wanted to react on the questions from Nikolaos about the guidelines, isn't it?
Yeah. Just it's a general comment that maybe we didn't have enough time to discuss on the usefulness of the proposed tools or the added value to have then at local level. I think one of the key barriers lies in the capacity of local governments to formulate these kind of strategies, not in terms of capacity building or training needs, within more in the constraints of intergovernmental relations, regional and national governments, and even like competencies, jurisdictional competencies. As far we know, some member state has these strategies at national level, and for sure in all the CAP strategic plans, at the end of the interventions block, at the end of the plans, there is a section to link to make the coherence and alignment with other strategies at national level with the digitalisation for agriculture within the CAP strategic plan. But again, we miss this local, real perspective because it's somehow elaborated at national level. And yeah, I think there is the main barrier. Give this jump to the local regional needs and added value to have a strategy at this level.
Thank you. I think we're still gonna go back to these tools when they are finalized and have or like more advanced. We are undergoing now peer review process, several stages peer review process. But I'm probably gonna have I hope for the discussion with the wider members of the community of Codex outside the project itself as today in the future, so we can come back to that. I think now it's time it's only left to me to thank the speakers and the engaging discussion and the, I think, quite encouraging feedback, and to pass on to Merve. I think I'm not going to conclude, Merve, because I think I spoke too much already. Maybe we could just do the concluding comments on behalf of Codex and ADL in this case. The floor is yours, Merve.
Serafin, and thank you also to all the speakers for your contributions and for your presentations. I would like also to thank all the participants that participated in the 3 events that we organized today, for joining us and for contributing to the really important and relevant discussions that we had. So just as a reminder, this bootcamp was a good opportunity to have a really 360 view of the Codex Knowledge Accelerator, because today we had 3 webinars focusing on the 3 strands of the KA community, which are on demo farms, on ACES, and on policy. And so we really encourage you to join the Knowledge Accelerator and to join the community, which is a space where we have the opportunity to facilitate knowledge exchange and collaboration with different stakeholders who are interested in these topics. And the goal is really to ensure that we have access to the latest insights, to the latest studies, tools, and also tackle the challenges in digitalization of agriculture, and sharing the different results that have been done in the Codex project, but also in other projects and other institutes. Working on digitalization of agriculture. So we really invite you to join the community and to follow the work that we're doing, and to work on the future for digital agriculture. So thank you again, everyone, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.